my god.
All right, so for those of you with flat feet, I like to think of part one as we're learning how to get out of that rolled in position and start to create an arch in our foot and start to find some external rotation or some ability to roll outwards in our hips and trying to get your pelvis from that tilted forward to somewhere going more the other direction. Different places work for different people. But today's post is part two, and for part two, I like to think of it as once we can get to this position where we know how to get out of being rolled in, can you move in this position? So if you're going to need to be able to walk and to take a step, you need a certain amount of hip extension or ability of your knee to pass behind your hip. And so today's reel is teaching you how to create that motion in the front of your hip so that you can take a step without rolling in, and how to create the ability to roll. All right, and so the last piece of the puzzle is once you have the ability to control your hip and your foot to take that step without excessively rolling in, can you reintroduce the motion that makes you want to roll in? So if I'm standing on my right leg and I move my left leg out to the side, it's going to make my right leg want to roll in again. So do I now have the control to resist that? And if you have the control to resist it without falling back in, then you're going to be able to take a step. You're going to be able to respond to life and not collapse back in. So it's not that we never want internal rotation and pronation. It's that we don't want it to an excessive degree. So hopefully that helps and makes sense.
There are just a few more questions on. Not totally sure if bladder irritants affect you or how they might. I remember when I first read that list of bladder irritants, I was like, those are the things that bring me joy. I have to give those things up. And that's absolutely not the case for everyone. For some people who truly have things like interstitial cystitis, those triggers can cause pretty debilitating pain, and then they need to be avoided. But for most of us, we can either anticipate that ingesting an irritant is going to increase our urgency or something like that, or we just need to be mindful of combining multiple irritants into one meal, right? So I'm curious how many of you guys have experienced any of this. Not totally sure if bladder irritants affect you or how they might be affecting you. I suggest doing a bladder log, or a bladder diary. So what I have my patients do, some nonsense going on back there. I have my patients write down everything that they eat and drink in a day by the hour on a graph. And then they write down whether they urinated or had a bowel movement, the quantity of urine, like small, medium, large. Did they have any leaking during the day? What were they doing when they were leaking? And then when they urinated, I want to know what their urgency was. Was it like strong, medium, or like a tiny little like, oh, just in case type of urgency? Would you guys be interested if I made like a PDF of this and gave it as a free download? Let me know. There are just a few more questions on the hypertonic pelvic floor series that we did, so I'm just going to answer those really quickly and then head into work. Okay, so I have a reel on this. I'll post it next. This could be tension related, or it could be the amount of urine you have in your bladder. So if you are a bladder holder and you wait and wait and wait and wait until it's time to go, it can be hard for your bladder to contract. So the bladder is a muscle. Let me see if I can prep up my phone so I can use both hands to describe this to you. Okay. The bladder is a muscle, and the way that muscles contract is they have these contractile elements that contact each other and then pull. But if a muscle is overstretched, those contractile elements that would normally touch and pull are farther apart. So it's like you have to wait for your bladder to empty a little and shrink down in order for the contractile elements to actually come and pull. So that's why sometimes, like in the morning, you feel like your stream is really slow if your bladder is super full. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, one area can be tighter than another. And I usually find this more with the posterior part, so like around the rectal area, around the tailbone. And I think it's just because there's more pelvic floor muscle mass back there, so it tends to be more problematic for people. But it can be one-sided, it can be both sides, it could just be one area. It's highly, highly variable. Yes. So orgasms involve involuntary muscle contractions of the pelvic floor, and some of those muscles attach